High above the Old Bailey stands a statue of justice. She holds a sword in her right hand and the scales of justice in her left. These days I am not sure that the sword of justice is still relevant. Murderers face hours of consultation on a psychiatrist's couch rather than face the death penalty. We have created a judicial system that puts emphasis on protecting everybody's rights whilst overlooking their wrongs. The scales of justice are equally redundant because the standard of justice we get is now based on our ability to pay. The truth is, justice is something of a lottery. It's available to some and not others. Phil Berriman suffered a grave injustice after a trivial dispute with a nightclub owner. This resulted in him enduring a nightmarish journey that took him halfway around the world, landed him in prison and ended with his attempted murder.
November 1990, it was November the 25th, it was my brother's birthday. Walked into a nightclub in Stockton and a big guy called John DePledge attacked me with another guy called John Layton. It was meant to be some sort of punishment beating paid for by a nightclub owner from Middlesbrough. It all went wrong because I got my ear bitten off and quite a few injuries. I was still standing at the end of the fracas and they ran off down the road. Transpired later on that the police arrested him and they charged him with wounding with intent. He had a bit of a reputation for biting people's noses and fingers off in fights and such as that. I had no intentions of going through with the court case, but it was to prove that I wasn't scared of the guy. Then there was all threats. A house got shot up, shot my Porsche. Eventually, I had no choice really to sort it out. I didn't want to hurt him, but I wanted somebody heavy enough to be able to scare him so that it was over and done with.
The man who was deemed scary enough to rein in DePledge was Newcastle villain Paddy Conroy.
So I went to Conroy in Newcastle through the guy from Hartlepool, and they got hold of him, warned him. He didn't get hurt, but it was all over and done with by then. And I would have been quite happy to pay £5,000–10,000, whatever the deal was. Unfortunately, I then became indebted to them, and because of my expertise in the boat business, I've been sailing since I was sort of 10 years old, and they were trying to break into the smuggling business, if you like, from Morocco. And they got me involved with various projects, acquiring and looking at different boats, you know, getting involved with stuff like that, which turned into a bit of a nightmare, to be honest. Rather than take money from me, it was then I became asked to do this and that, and originally I'd bought a boat for them, or on behalf of them, in Mallorca, off an old pal of mine, and that went badly wrong on the south coast of Spain. So the next operation was the tug in Scotland.
Conroy and his gang had purchased a tug that was moored in Campbelltown, Scotland. Although unseaworthy, Conroy sent Berriman to make makeshift repairs so that the vehicle could be used to smuggle drugs from North Africa.
When we arrived there, we were supposedly looking for a tug, and we were going to go and see the harbour master. And when we didn't have to look for it, the tug was sort of, if you like, moored there. The customs office was 20 metres behind us, above a shop that was actually the tourist information board. And I looked down and there's these two guys, and they're both smoking, they had all brand new gear on, like they'd never done a day's work in their lives, and they're smoking these big joints. I went down and I said, look lads, you know, you look a bit obvious, you know, you're standing and smoking joints and et cetera, you're bringing attention to the job, you know? And he just opened up his coat and he went, here man, I'm a fucking heavy. I'm here to watch this fucking boat, right? I'm not a labourer. And he showed me this big gun. We were in this Campbelltown. So we went to the local, I said, look, let's go and get a cup of tea. So I've organised a cup of tea and he's organised a milkshake. Now his attitude was that my tea came first, the guy was taking the piss, so he threatened to throw the guy through the window because the milkshake was coming after the coffee, and his attitude, well, his reasoning was that it would take less time to make the milkshake because he didn't have to boil the kettle. Then they said, look, why don't you stay the night and we're going to go to this dance venue type thing. And because the lads are all coming up, they'd organised a whole bunch of local villains from Newcastle to come up to this place because everything was laid around on shore. You know, there was quad bikes and machinery and behind chain link fences. If it was in Newcastle, everything would have been gone. But the reason there was no crime in Campbelltown is it was because there's only one place at the end of this long road, and there's no crime because there's nowhere to run. Everybody left everything open. There was vans in the street full of parcels with the keys in and the engines running. Nobody did anything. So they saw this as a paradise for the lads, and they would organise everybody to come up at the weekend, and everything they needed for this tug, they'd been out and shoplifted and kept them. You know, they had money to spend, but they went and nicked everything around camp. There was a mini crime wave happened in Campbelltown while they were there. They went to this dance where the local guys were the doormen, if you like. Next thing you know, they've got these two were having this fight. They've been passing dodgy £20 notes, and it came on top. So the next thing you know, there's this great big fight. Glover went back and he smashed the place up, tables, chairs, the bar, everything's all smashed to pieces. And they still continued with the job. I rang Conroy, I said, what the, you know, it's on top, mate. Oh, you want to think yourself lucky you didn't lose, otherwise you'd gone back and shot them. And
The bungling mariners never left the harbour as the vessel sank before entering the breakwater.
you know, there was no way they were going to get away with it. This boat would stick out like a sore thumb anywhere it went. It was like 50-year-old or something like that, and hadn't been to sea for God knows how long.
Despite offering to pay Conroy for warning off his tormentor and working unpaid for weeks, Berriman was still deemed to be in his debt. However, when Conroy was remanded in custody to await trial for kidnap and torture, Berriman thought that his debt was nil and void. Sadly for Berriman, his joy was short-lived.
Conroy then got arrested for the kidnap and torture of Billy Collier, and as far as I was concerned, that was it. It was over, it was finished with, and I was ecstatic, to be honest. And then, of course, he escaped. I was then put under pressure to take him abroad, and he was then the most wanted man, if you like, in England. He told me there was a job in Tenerife where there was 5 tons of hashish to pick up, which had come from Pakistan, out of Afghanistan, and it was on a freighter. I went back to the UK. Conroy got real paranoid, thought that the job had been done by other people and he'd been cut out of it, as had happened a year or two before, and demanded I come back through to Spain to see him, otherwise there was going to be trouble, they were going to set fire to my house, etc., etc. So I flew out to meet Conroy and explained that my boat was still where it was in Gibraltar, and that the Melanie hadn't collected any goods from Morocco. He told me then that I had to sail the boat down to Tenerife, and that the crew would then be waiting for me there. I went to Casablanca, a place called Mohammedia, where we waited for 3 or 4 days, and I met one of their crew. He said that it wasn't Tenerife anymore, that it was going to be Dakar. I rang Conroy, and then I was threatened that I would have to sail the boat to Dakar, or they were going to set fire to my house with my kids in it, in Billingham. So I sailed down to Dakar after a pretty horrendous trip, and I tried to get out there, but I got beaten in Dakar by these people. We were left basically with no choice but to sail the boat back. We left Dakar, met a freighter about 180 miles off Guinea, where we collected 3.7 tons of hashish. They didn't give us any fuel, they took our food off us, and left us basically damaged. And we had an horrendous trip back. We changed the appearance of the boat, etc. And we sailed straight into a trap. 70 or 80 Customs and Excise and North and Regional Crime Squad, they were all waiting, and arrested Conroy in Malaga the next day.
Facing a 10 to 15-year prison sentence, Berriman could take no more and told the authorities of his ordeal. According to the law, if you are forced to commit a crime, there is a defence known as jurors, and that is how Berriman pleaded when he eventually stood trial.
There was 3 of us charged with 3.7 tons of cannabis.
So what was the outcome of the being charged?
Well, we did 15 months on remand. My 2 co-defendants bottled it and pleaded guilty, and I went on with a full duress defence and proved it in court. And we lost all the boats because the other 2 guys pleaded guilty, but I was still free, and I was free of Conroy because he then was convicted for his kidnap and torture. I think they got 10 and 11 years.
Berriman may well have been free, but free from Conroy he was not. In fact, the worst was yet to come.
I got out, I think it was November the 4th, 1995, and then I had with me all of the unused evidence, which I'd applied for, because I got all of Conroy's papers and such as that, and it proved basically that Conroy's firm had paid informers in it, and I had all this paperwork, and his boxer pal came through and asked me if I could go through to a yard in Hartlepool. I think it was about the 13th of January, I'd been out maybe 2 months, to help with Conroy's appeal. Conroy was going to have an appeal, so I went armed with all these documents that proved everything. And when I got there, 3 guys jumped out with bits of wood with nails in. They're all masked up and gloved up, heads covered. What sort of
suits were they wearing?
There were overalls with bags over their head with their eyes and big gloves, big welded gloves on, and they just had big lumps of wood with nails in, and they just set about me and beat me all over the floor. And they beat me for 2 or 3 hours. I had 130 separate injuries. They hit my legs with ball peen hammers and tried to break my legs. They thought they had broken my legs. I had 27 staples in the back of my head, teeth knocked out, broken ribs, well, you name it, I was just beaten all over. I was rolling around the floor while they just beat me up. I knew I was in for a good kicking, but I didn't think they'd intended to kill me. But knowing the organisational skills of this firm anyway, anything could go wrong.